Hello students, I am Dr. Tanmoy Vishwas. I welcome you all in my channel Chemistry, the Mystery of Molecules. I hope you all are fine. So today we are going to discuss an interesting topic, that is preparation of amino acids, okay, by nucleophilic substitution reaction. Actually this is based on today's discussion will be based on the application of HVZ reaction or Hell-Volat-Zelensky reaction. Okay, so what we are going to mainly discuss, first of all, from acid to acid halide to amino acid. So this thing mainly it will be the main focus of today's discussion. So today during discussion, what points we are going to discuss, that is advantage of this process and disadvantage, role of each reagent with complete mechanism, and preparation of hydrophobic amino acid mainly we will focus today. And we will discuss also the little idea about the source of reagent. Why? Because amino acids are widely used chemical, so it is highly desirable that source must be logical, cheap, environment friendly, and waste should be minimum. And most importantly, please keep it in mind that this is industrial method, so it must be economically viable. Okay, so and another thing, optical resolution, because today's the chemical reaction we are going to discuss today will result in racemic amino acid, although for our biological system we need a particular enantiomer, actually a enantiomer. Okay, so a lot of chemistry to be learned in this video. Please let's start the discussion. Okay, so preparation of alanine using HVZ reaction. Alanine is actually that methyl substituted. Okay, alkyl group, R group is the methyl substituted. So how this, as I told that through HVZ reaction will start from carboxylic acid, and for this purpose this is actually chosen. So this is actually propionic acid. Okay, so 3 carbon acid. So in presence of bromine and red phosphorus, first step if you react it will and after that work up with water, it will result in this 2-bromopropionic acid. And actually this reaction is the HVZ reaction. Okay, means Hell-Volat-Zelensky reaction. By the way, I have already uploaded lectures on HVZ reaction. Please visit if you want to learn further. Now question is, why we have chosen bromine first of all, not chlorine? Because first, as I told that this compound needed in a large amount, and that process must be economically viable as well as cheap. Question, why we are using bromine? Because compared to bromine, chlorine is cheaper. But why? Actually bromine is, remember, it is actually less reactive but more selective. What do I mean by the statement? See, this actually have, this is the alpha carbon, this has alpha hydrogen, and this has beta hydrogen. So if chlorine we use, chlorine is more reactive, that's why along with some alpha chloropropionic acid, some beta chloropropionic acid can produce, and that impurity can create lots of problem. Because see, at the end what amino acid we are going to get, that amino acid is actually racemic. So 2 component we will get. If we get the pure chemical transformation 100%, then also 2 component. So if you increase that, so just calculate how many material you may get. So that's too confusing to separate. That's why it is highly desirable to choose selected methods. That's why bromination is chosen. Okay, let's discuss to the second step. The second step is actually reaction of ammonia with this alpha halo acid. Actually this is a nucleophilic substitution reaction, means in this case ammonia acts as a nucleophile, reattacks, it is a SN2 type process, and ultimately Br leaves. So in this way the ultimate product is alanine. And by the way, please remember that I have written carboxyl group as well as NH2 group, but they don't remain in this way. What they convert, actually they convert into Zuitter ionic form, means so this ammonia becomes NH3 plus and the C carboxylic acid became carboxylate minus. Why? Because we know ammonia is basic and carboxylic acid is acidic, so if they exchange their protons they get stabilization. Fine, that's a different issue. Now question, in this case ammonia acts as a nucleophile. Okay, so first of all, this is, you may consider that alpha halo carbonyl type, this alpha position, so SN2 is better. But the point we should focus, that is 70 equivalent ammonia. Question: why ammonia is taken so large excess? Point number 1. See, first of all, ammonia is a gas. Okay, so when you are dealing with, you should take excess amount of gas such that it can react properly. Point number 1. Point number 2, that actually we need monoalkylation. So logically, if you increase the concentration or amount of ammonia, it is expected that probability of monoalkylation will improve, means mono substitution. Okay, fine. Now a simple question may come in your mind that, sir, you are telling about monoalkylation, but logically possible and generally what we observe, compared to, if we compare ammonia versus RNH2, that RNH2 is more nucleophilic because of the plus I effect of R, but why not the same phenomena happening in this case? See, just look at the groups. In this case, actually this produced amino acid, means this one is not electron rich compared to the amine. Why? Because just see, in this case, there is a carboxyl group which is withdrawing in nature. So if it's withdrawing in nature, then means because of this CH is also withdrawing. So consequently, it will not increase the electron density on ammonia. So probability of reaction will reduce. Second, this is actually a nucleophilic substitution, better to say SN2 type reaction. Now see, if you compare the bulkness, so in this case the third point is the minus I of amino acid. Okay, the fourth point is, if you look at that, in this case, that compared to ammonia, the amino acid is more bulky, and we know that increase in bulkness reduces the chance of nucleophilic substitution reaction. Consequently, what happens? Because of all these conditions, reaction will prefer to remain or stop at this amino acid stage. So no further polyalkylation will occur. Fine. Okay. Now let's discuss about glycine, because this is the smallest amino acid, and actually please remember, this is not optically active. And another interesting point about glycine is that glycine is, many cases, it is the mother compound or parent synthon for the preparation of other amino acid. Why? Because if you look at the structure of this glycine, this CH2 could further be converted into something else, means any substitution will result in another amino acid. So that is the uniqueness of glycine. We will discuss in future about those reactions. Fine. So first, from glycine, means it's actually means 2 carbon compound. So that's why we have started from acetic acid. And if you react with acetic acid with chlorine and red phosphorus, it will result in monochloroacetic acid. So question, why chlorine here? Just previous slide I explained that chlorine is not a good reagent for halogenation on the alpha position of carboxylic acid. Okay, because other chlorination possible, but in this case, why you have chosen? First of all, because of cost, and second, only one alpha carbon is there, no other carbon there, no other hydrogen there. So it doesn't matter to us that whether the reaction will happen alpha position or beta, because no beta is there or other is there, so reaction will not happen. Fine, that is the advantage. And please remember, when you do any chemical reaction, do not just memorize, or in lab do not just follow whatever you have learned. Just think, is it really important, is it logical, is it beneficial? After that we should decide what reagent we shall choose for a particular reaction. Okay, so after this we have prepared this monochloroacetic acid. Now after that, if you want to react this with excess, means 70 equivalent ammonia, then you will get also glycine. Same, no problem, like the previous case alanine. But in this case, another thing chosen, why not ammonia path? What is the disadvantage? Because in this case yield low. Okay, but if you form this urotropin hexamethylene tetramine, what happens? The yield improvises, and in this case what happens? These lone pairs of electrons attacks efficiently through a SN2 type pathway and ultimately result in this glycine derivative. Okay, and further hydrolysis, it will result in this final amino acid glycine. By the way, what is hexamethylene tetramine? Actually, this is a compound produced by the seed-based condensation between formaldehyde and ammonia. Generally, for other aldehyde, we get imine, but for formaldehyde, because of less bulkness, this compound further reacts together and an acetyl type reaction. Okay, means like for example trimer of acetaldehyde, you may observe those things. So that's those type of reaction occurs, and what ultimately it results in hexamethylene tetramine. Okay, so if it looks like that, but remember this is actually source of ammonia. But second, see, in this case ammonia, this ammonia molecule is a gas, but this urotropin is a solid reagent, but actually not solid. When we are doing reaction in a solvent, it is in liquid phase, so reactivity is further improvised. So consequently, so point number 1, the directional property of lone pair, and point number 2, the better nucleophilicity better. That's why it results in higher yield. And just look at, in this case, overall disease 90%. That's a very impressive, and it's overall yield. Please look at this, it's overall yield. Okay, so in this way this reagent is prepared. And by the way, question is means if you feel little confused, just think that this urotropin, let me draw it again. So this molecule, okay, if you look at this molecule, this is actually all the nitrogens are sp3, and lone pair have a particular this directional property. For example, if you feel any confusion, just think about in this way, this is, so lone pairs are out, means equatorial type position. That is the reason for its unique reactivity. Okay, similar type of reactivity you may find quinacridine type molecules. Okay, let's discuss further. Now let's discuss another hydrophobic amino acid, it is phenylalanine. Okay, from dicarboxylic acid method. So in this case, first chosen diethyl malonate or DIM, which is actually a active methylene compound. Why it is chosen? Because in presence of base, it can generate the corresponding carbon ion very easily. Means that this hydrogen will be abstracted and it will generate a carbon ion which is actually resonance stabilized. Better to say doubly stabilized. Why I am saying the word doubly? Because two ester groups are there which will stabilize this negative charge. That's why their acidity is significantly higher, and generally their pKa value is near about 9 to 11. Okay, so that's why they're good. And another thing, what carbon ion is produced that can undergo SN2 reaction with this benzyl bromide backside attack, and ultimately it will result in this benzyl attached active methylene compound. See, till now look at that, there is another hydrogen left, and still this is also active proton. So in second step, so see what I have given here, ethanolic KOH. Okay, so first of all, if I ask question theoretically, what reaction is expected to occur first? Because at the end I have written this is a diacid. So which reaction will occur at the initial stage? First of all, initial stage will be this proton abstraction. Why? Because this is acidic proton, and acid based reactions are the fastest reaction, and after that this hydrolysis of this ester will occur, and ultimately after workup with dilute HCl, these will result this dicarboxylic acid. Fine. Now question, next step, we know that we got acid. Fine. Now actually we need monocarboxylase, but still we got dicarboxylic acid, and after that we have refluxed with bromine and we got this monobromo derivative. How? This proton got replaced through enolization and ultimately bromination reaction occur. And in this case not PBr3. Look, it is a pure bromine. I'll discuss why. Just let's go to the reaction steps. Now in next step, what happens if the molecule is heated and decarboxylation reaction occur? Because in this case we had an excess carboxylic acid group. For amino acid you don't need it, we need alpha bromo carboxylic acid. So for that one heating, and another, remember, beta keto acid undergo decarboxylation relatively easily. So with respect to one carboxylic acid, another is beta keto, and I have already discussed a lecture about the decarboxylation of beta keto acid. Okay, so you may visit, because they undergo 6-member transition state. That's why this decarboxylation is further facile. Now what happens in the next step? We have this alpha bromophenyl, better to say, no, not phenyl, actually 3-phenyl propionic acid. Now in the next step, in presence of excess ammonia, SN2 type reaction occurs, and ultimately it will result a racemic phenylalanine. Okay, I guess you have understood this. Now question is about bromination again. So the dicarboxylic acid did not undergo decarboxylation during bromination, but the next step it occurs. Question 5. Okay, to understand this, you need to think another thing. We haven't taken PBr3, only Br. Why? Because of these 2 carboxylic acid, this compound undergo enolization very easily, and we know the enols are good nucleophile. Okay, and that's why they react with this bromine and undergo bromination. Okay, so first of all, means if I draw this, I guess it will be easier for you. This PHCH2, this double bond OH, and second step COH. So in next step, what happens? This OH pushes its lone pair, and this attacks this bromine, and it leaves. So in this way reaction occurs. Fine, point number 1. Another thing, see, bromine have reacted under reflux, but still reaction didn't happen. When reflux is mentioned, it doesn't mean that high temperature. You have to consider what is the boiling point of the solvent. In this case, ether. Ether means it is diethyl ether. Its boiling point is near about 35 to 40 degree. That's why refluxing temperature cannot be over to around 45 or 50. So that is pretty low temperature. Okay, so that temperature decarboxylation cannot occur. Even another point that previously we have discussed many cases, decarboxylative bromination means that through decarboxylation, the alpha position means this position carbon ion generated, and that nucleophile is trapped using bromine. Why not this in this case? See, bromine will, if you do, there is some logic that bromine may react, fine, but there is some risk. What is about the risk? There is a phenyl group. It is my personal opinion that this phenyl group can undergo aromatic electrophilic substitution of bromine, because this is not a simple benzene, this is an activated benzene. Okay, because of this alkyl group. Fine. So from this discussion, what we learned, first of all, we should not follow exactly same thing always. We must be careful while choosing, and from a one-step reaction getting less yield and mixture of product is not good compared to 2-step with selective reaction. Okay, so that's why this 2-step reaction is done, and in this case, in the second step, means this beta keto derivative, it is already brominated. So if you heat, there is no problem with bromine, only the carboxyl group will left. Okay, so this is the overall strategy to prepare phenylalanine through HVZ reaction. So in conclusion, what you have learned today? We have learned today about HVZ reaction to prepare amino acid is easy and cheaper method. Fine. For amine introduction, means the NH2 group introduction into the amino acid, ammonia gas is needed to be used in excess to about multiple amination. And another thing, compared to any amine compound, it is cheaper to use ammonia because ammonia is the parent compound. This is parent compound and it produced cheaper way, for example Haber process. So that's why if you can use this ammonia directly as a synthon, the cost associated with the process is expected to be low. But the problem is that this reaction resulted in racemic amino acid, and this racemic amino acid cannot be used directly. You need to purify into optically pure isomer, and how that could be done, actually I have discussed this thing in a dedicated video, but still I'll give you a very brief. First of all, amino acid is acylated using acetic anhydride, and this acylated amino acid undergo enzyme hydrolysis, and enzyme hydrolyzes selectively, and this selectivity is the main risk factor for their separation. So So one enantiomer remains in the acetyl form, another remains acetic as acid form, and acids are more soluble than anhydrides, means anylides better to say here, NHCOCH3. So the solubility, it will be separated again. So what enantiomer we needed, we have separated. Then there is 50% remaining, and is that waste? No, that undergo further racemization. And so in this way same process goes on. What do I mean? For example, you have DL and D initially at 50-50. Right now you have separated L, so there is D 50%, for example 50 molecules if you consider. Then this is undergo racemization, then it converted into L 25, another case D 25. So in this way these L again separated. So in this way the process goes on such that the cost became less. And second, if you think that okay, let's throw this 50%, where will you throw? Everywhere there is a issue of pollution, so that is another problem. So that's why such kind of selective processes are very important for industry. Okay, so this is the end of this discussion. I hope this video may be useful for you. I thank you all for watching my lecture, and if you think my teaching is worthy, then please like the video and write your opinion in the comment box. And if you think this video is useful for your academics purpose, study, knowledge, then please share with your friends such that they can also enjoy the benefit. And most importantly, if you think my work is worthy and my channel is providing good content, then please subscribe my channel Chemistry the Mystery of Molecule, and along with that please press the bell icon to get the notification